This will be a brief overview of the NavMesh system in Unity. There are some excellent resources available through the Unity website, but I'm going to try to run through this quickly so you can see what's possible. This scene has a few simple cubes arranged to look a little bit like a game level. I have one object called player, and I have a collection of other things that make up my level geometry. Now I also have a PlayerController script that does only a couple of simple things. It has a link to a camera that's exposed to the Unity editor and a NavMesh agent, which is one of the components you will be working with. The update function is checking every frame for a mouse button input and doing a screen raycast to detect clicks on the NavMesh. And if the ray hits geometry, then it sets the destination for the agent. Now, we'll create the agent in Unity in just a moment. First, I want to attach that PlayerController script to the player. So now I will see that in the inspector. I want to make sure the camera is connected to the player. So I'll drag that onto the cam link. And then I need to add a NavMesh agent component to this game object as well. So I'll choose Add Component, and NavMesh Agent is what I want to add. I'm going to collapse the mesh renderer and box collider. I don't need to see those. The default values we'll work with for a little bit. And then I need to connect this NavMesh agent to the agent on my script. Now the player is ready to go. Let's look at how to create a NavMesh. First, I'll create an empty game object. Name this NavMesh. And using the NavMesh surface component, I will then click Bake. And you can see this creates a NavMesh that I can see in the scene. If I press play now, I can click to make my player navigate around the scene. In order to get the NavMesh surface component, as well as the NavMesh modifier, modifier volume, and NavMesh link, you can find those on GitHub, and I'll put that in the description as well. So you want to clone or download, and then download a zipped version of this, then drop the assets folder into your project, and you should have access to the same components. Now you can see in my game view that my player can move around, can bump into things, but can't get to the other side of the level, can't get up onto this platform. So the first extra component I want to add is a NavMesh link. I want to create a new game object. So I'll create empty. And I'll just name this something simple like link. Add component NavMesh link. And locate this item. Place it so that it looks like it's connecting these two areas. It has some handles that I can click and drag on to place the link. The center handle, I can actually set the width of the link so that a player can jump across from a number of different points instead of just one specific point. And the area type can be walkable, not walkable, jump. I'll leave it at default for now. Press play. Now when I click on the other side, the player can jump across or sort of teleport. Right now it's not animating, it just sort of zips across. And now the player can climb and walk around. While I'm still in playback mode, if I select the player and the NavMesh and ensure that Gizmos is turned on, I can not only see a representation of the NavMesh itself, but also a blue handle indicating the facing vector of the player and the speed the player is moving, as well as the travel path being mapped out for the player. You can also see that individual triangles on the nav mesh are highlighted, indicating the path that the player is going to take. Now these blocks were previously included in the bake, that's why the player was bumping into them and moving around them. I may want to remove them from the bake process and treat them as obstacles instead of as part of the level. In order to do that, I've placed these objects onto custom layers. I made some layers avoid an obstacle, and I'll need to select the nav mesh, and in the nav mesh surface component, I'll change the include layers to not include those two layers. So I've removed avoid and obstacle. I will again hit bake, and you'll see that those are no longer treated as obstacles. If I press play, now my player can pass right through those things, including the supports over here. So I can treat them differently by adding some components here. I want to add a NavMesh obstacle to each of these, and I'll actually shift select all of those and add NavMesh obstacle components. For these orange blocks, I'm going to turn on the carve option in the NavMesh obstacle. For the yellow piece, I will leave that turned off. And you'll see when I select the mesh, objects with carve have already been carved out, and I don't need to rebake in order to see that happen. This one, on the other hand, hasn't been carved. You'll see the behavior difference between the two is for the orange pieces, the player will traverse a path around those obstacles as if the player is aware that they are present. On the other hand, for the yellow block, if I try to walk to the other side, my player is going to bump into it first and then pass around. And that's the difference between having it carved out of the nav mesh and having it just represent an obstacle without affecting the nav mesh. Now I can change the player behaviors a little bit. I could speed the player up. The angular speed is how fast the player turns, so I'll set that to, say, 360. Acceleration, let's put that a little higher and see if this player is faster now. The NavMesh Link can be used in a number of different ways. It can be used when you're dynamically loading levels and you want to add walkable areas. It could also be used, for example, to activate and deactivate pathways between certain areas in a game that requires puzzles or other kinds of logic to complete the level.